Okay, Toastmasters and darn Bayless. I've raised the bar a little bit high to the point of, well, Icebreakers can't use notes or anything like that. Okay, so Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, I was raised by a woman who, prior to my birth, had her first two children taken away from her because the state of New York declared her unfit to raise children. I grew up socially stunted. It wouldn't be until much later in life that I started to learn the skills to connect with people on a social level. So here I am in middle school. I've adopted the persona of the dumb reject kid. When my counselor says, I want you to go take the test for Bronx High School Science. I didn't even know what that was about, but I later learned that if Bronx Science were its own country, it would be tied in 12th place with the country Norway for a number of Nobel Prize winners. When I get in, the class brain looks at me and says, don't tell me you got into Bronx Science. So getting into Bronx Science is wonderful for me. It tells me I've got a brain in my head, potential, something to share with the world. It also shows up my greatest weakness, total lack of work ethic. I realized quickly, if I don't get this under control, I'm going to be thrown out. I'm going to lose out on all this opportunity. So I come up with a plan, and the plan is this time I'll work harder. Great plan. Getting kicked out of Bronx Science is like getting thrown out of Harry Potter's Hogwarts. So just before I get thrown out, two young, attractive women knocking on my door. When my mother suggests I go talk to them, well, sure. Turns out they're knocking on my door because they're Jehovah's Witnesses. And a year later, so am I. Now, people will tell you that Jehovah's Witnesses are a cult, that they exercise sinister levels of mind control, social control. They want to take over every aspect of your life. Yeah, that's true. And from the place I'm coming from, of this total dysfunction, this is actually a step up in the world for me. Because as messed up as these people are in religion, it actually gives me a chance to be around people who are practically functional members of society. Secondary benefit, tell me if this sounds familiar. They have a training program, mandatory, where you get up in front of an audience and you give a 5-minute speech. After your speech, you're working on a specific point of speaking, and someone evaluates you and tells you where you can improve and what you did well. Sound familiar? Anybody? Okay. So, 24, I get married. She comes from a dysfunctional train wreck of a family, and so do I. We've got so much in common. 24, we're separated. And I finally break free of the Jehovah's Witnesses. This leaves me with a lot of questions about the psychology of belief, how people get sucked up into this kind of stuff, and a serious distaste for the kind of people who want to use religion as a cudgel to make you live your life their way. 26 to 30, I'm finding myself finally. I go through therapy. I start meditating. I'm reading truckloads of self-help books, studying martial arts, and practicing paganism, which has the best parties ever. Something's getting ready to happen that's going to change my life and take me from being a socially really awkward person that I was still at that point in time to a much more confident person. See, the women I've been dating since my marriage, and my ex-wife as well, all have an interest in something called BDSM. Now, this is back before 50 Shades of Grey becomes this huge phenomenon where they're making a movie out of it, but it's basically that stuff with the bondage and flogging, that sort of thing. And I say, where? I was raised right with at least one thing, and that's men don't hit women. So I can't do that. Little did I know. Remember those pagan parties I talked about? Something's about to happen at one that's going to change my mind and my life. Because I walk into one, and the first thing I see is there is a woman hanging naked from wrist cuffs, getting flogged. In the middle of this party, I'm just like, oh. So I walk over to where I can see her face, and to my shock and surprise, I realize she's having the time of her life. And then, this is where it happens for me. The guy who's flogging her turns to me and says, "Hey, buddy, my arm's getting tired. Can you take over?" Blank, blank. That's when it hits me. This isn't something he's doing to her. This is something he's doing for her. All those years wasted. So I pick up the flyer, I start. She's loving it. I see a second one, and I start. She's liking that. And then my martial art training kicks in, and I start Florentine. She's loving it. The crowds, the people around start forming a crowd around to watch, and people start going, "Hey, can I be next?" Sure. So this is cool, because now I've got a party trick. Now I've got something that I can use to connect with people, and I start to break out my shell as a result of this. Pretty soon I make this my thing. I'm taking classes, I'm reading books, taking notes, studying how to do this safely and effectively. So I even wind up pretty soon running a group. I'm teaching the classes. This has given me 5.5 years of leadership experience from this one little weird thing. Pretty soon I'm doing it for work. I make a career out of it on the telephone, and I'm studying hypnosis and bringing that into it as well. So this has been great for the past 5 years, but I'm starting to realize it has a lack of impact. I'm not living up to my potential. I could be doing more. I don't want this on my tombstone. So I run into a woman who'd seen a presentation I gave at the Pagan Student Association about 9 years ago. And she said that something I said had a big impact on her life. So that's when I realized, I said to myself, if I take all these things I've learned, put them together, polish them up, I can offer something to the world. And that's what I'm doing here. Mr. Toastmaster.